Kirsch, and I am one of the design engagement leaders here at Monogram. Thank you for joining us again today. We're super excited to be here for our Wednesday Table Talk series. And I'm really excited because we have two advisors from our 2019 Design Council, Laura Muller and Jen Bertrand. So this is just going to be an hour that I think everyone will really enjoy. Plus, they're just fun and funny and so knowledgeable. So I think we're going to have a blast. But before we get started, I want to quickly tell y'all just a couple of things. First is we just launched two brand new appliance collections here at Monogram, the Statement Collection as well as the Minimalist Collection. The Statement line is our transitional line. It has beautiful breast touch points, and our Minimalist Collection offers a beautiful minimal appearance. So every Friday we will send out a follow-up. You can click and learn more about these products, and you can also click and learn more about our guests from the week. So in this case, Laura and Jen. So one last thing, quickly pass it over to Alex for a couple of quick housekeeping rules.
Okay, great. Thanks, Elise. Let me know if you all can see my screen. 1 second here. Can you see my screen? And me scrolling at the taskbar? Yeah?
I can't.
You can't? Okay, hold on. Let me try one more time. We always have a little bit. Hold on. Let me try one more time. Okay, let me try this.
Perfect.
Now you can?
See your screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So again, right here is the video icon. So we would love to see your faces and see who has all joined us. So go ahead and turn on your video. Right next to that is your mic. Everyone is muted and we'll keep you muted, but we definitely want to be hearing from you during this session. So go ahead and scroll over to the show conversations chat right here. That is our chat box. So go ahead and ask away with your questions, and we will make sure we get them answered throughout the series. Also, there is a new icon, this raise your hand feature. So if Jen or Laura or Elise are asking a great question and you agree and or have a question on it, go ahead and raise your hand. And then lastly, I'm going to show you guys how to pin the three of them so that they are your primary screen. So if you go to show participants and go ahead and click this participants icon. Let me click it again to show you guys. And then over here on the right-hand side of your screen, it should show up and everyone's name should be there. So they should be listed in alphabetical order. So we're going to go ahead and look for Jen Bertrand right here. And we're going to click on those three dots next to her name and we're going to pin her.
And Alex, no need to pin me.
Okay. Are you
Jen
sure?
and Laura.
Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and go down. Hold on 1 second. Find Laura. Okay, and then you see Laura right here. And then we're going to pin Laura. Again, click those three buttons, click pin, and they should be your screen now. So I'm going to, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and kick it off to them, and they're going to talk to you guys.
Yay. Awesome.
Real quick, too, before y'all take over, I get the pleasure of introducing this dynamic duo. And so real quickly, I just want to tell you about these two ladies. Laura Muller is the CEO and interior designer for 4 Point Design Build in Los Angeles. And Jen Bertrand, a designer and TV host out of Kansas City. And well, I say that, but I feel like when I follow her on Instagram, she probably spends just as much time on an airplane as she does at home, family. So say Jen from everywhere. But both of these designers have the most beautiful curated design styles. Laura is super bright and crisp and really beautifully weaves together traditional and minimal styles. And Jen is almost the exact opposite, which is why I love her so much. She uses bright colors, and she always has just a really killer statement piece, whether it's the tile or the countertop surface that she selects. So I'm super excited to have them here today, and they're just going to tell us all things kitchens and talk through several of y'all's questions that came from over the weekend. So, Jen, Laura, I'm passing it to you.
Hi. Go ahead, Jen.
No, Laura, I want you to start because obviously, like, some of you guys know us and some of you don't, but I have admired Laura's work from afar. So, Laura, if you go ahead and start with just a highlight of what everyone's seeing, we'll take it from there.
Well, hey, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm so excited. So the first slide here is just basically our aesthetic is exactly what Jen said, basically weaving together very thoughtfully traditional styles, clean, fresh, modern. Modern not in the sense that you would think modern as versus antique, but more in the idea of a modern way to look at traditional and architectural lines and how they kind of intersect. So our designs are typically, there's a lot of white, but it's also really, our clients tend to really love productivity, and they have a passion for healing and wellness. So a lot of our spaces do have that kind of serenity and energy too. Show you the next slide. We do commercial and residential. You see we've just completed a dance studio. We do a lot of tenant improvements. We do residential and commercial restaurant design. And again, it's really a client-centered approach. We're meticulous about listening, and we tend to, our philosophy is basically to slow the client down just a bit, give them enough, increase their bandwidth by giving them enough time to really touch their core of their concept. And this enables them to front load well, and then usually the construction process at that point is pretty seamless. So that's basically what my husband and I work together. My husband, Cliff, a lot of you have met him. He's a general contractor, and I'm a designer. We do architecture, construction documents, project management, and design pretty much concept to turnkey on our designs. And so that's basically how we approach everything. We're very grateful to be doing what we do every day, and still really enjoy the process.
Yay, you're amazing. And obviously, all of you listening are amazing in your own right. Like when we do these speaking gigs, we're not trying to talk down to you. It's really just about starting that conversation. As you can see, I am the opposite of Laura, and that is why we are friends and why we love each other. I kind of, in my design aesthetic, I really, every single adventure is tailored to that person, and I try to always think of something weird and eclectic and different to do. You will love it or you will hate it, and I don't worry about that. And then I come from a family of artists. My mom has a sculpture in the Reagan Presidential Library. My father was a colonel in the Air Force, and we traveled all over the world. But so this bottom image is one of my paintings. So sometimes it'll go from creating artwork for a space to just creating it to houses abroad in Costa Rica. And then you can see, like, obviously I'm not scared of color, and I like playing with texture, and I'm sure all of you do as well. But this is why Laura and I wanted to start talking about Downhome Luxury and how the concept of luxury is changing and being defined and constantly evolving. And I'm sorry, right now I've been told I sound like Roseanne Barr before, so if you need to turn the volume down on me, you won't offend me. But let's take the concept of luxury and let's talk about how to make it accessible and user friendly. So when you start to look at the traditional concept of what luxury used to be, it was that stereotypical concept. And no joke, since I was a little kid, I always liked really expensive things. I don't know what was wrong with me. I wasn't born into that. But this concept was something that I was like, yes, this is amazing. And this concept of luxury will never go away. That's always going to be here. There's always that clientele for it. But this new concept of down-home luxury really kind of turns it on its head. I mean, things started getting so absurd, I think, prior to COVID, and we're not going to get into all that.
but that the hard reset on life that we all get to do is something that can really turn into a positive, to really redefine how you pitch your clients, how you see your home, and all of those moments. Take a second to read this quote by Hemingway. See, I didn't read it to you because I know you all can read, but I laugh at the end that he's like, you will be dead soon enough. Nothing like Hemingway to ram it home. But if you think about it, it really goes back to that joy of life as a luxury and that concept of really it not being that material concept as a whole in luxury. And as we're all seeing that the concept of multi-generational homes are happening more and more, you have many generations under one roof defining what is luxury to them. Laura, you have your mom that lives with you, right?
Yes, indeed, indeed. And now the kids are home because they've all been furloughed. So we are, it's brought it home, and really interacting and interfacing with the existing house that we have and the existing formats that we are programmed to get used to is kind of uprooted and reset, which is great. We just did a wonderful project last year that really touched on how do we design for multi-generational living, because you're having toddlers now living with parents and grandparents, and yet grandparents are now fit and well and they are living longer, and now, but yet as they age, we want them to age in place. And so aging in place combined with home daycare, combined with a revolving door of, the young people coming in and out of college. It's, it's especially in Los Angeles, it can be very expensive to get started after college. So many times they will come home and they will stay and they will, reset themselves after college and then launch. So these new ways that we are tackling the same square footage, and how do we actually take that same square footage and make it more functional based on that is the luxury. And I think that we're switching, we're redefining what luxury really means today.
No, that's amazing, because I was telling Laura this story. I lived in Naples, Italy. That's Naples, Italy to the left. That's Mount Vesuvius, which destroyed Pompeii and Herculaneum. But I lived there for a year, and we lived in a palazzo. And I don't say that to sound douchey. I really just say it to share the story of, we lived in a palazzo off base, and it was every level was a different family member. And the base of this palazzo were the parents. And every Sunday evening, there was a Sunday dinner with a pizza oven, and it was about coming together. And it was not in the same essential dwelling, but it was the multi-story dwelling. And so when you look at a concept like the Monogram hearth pizza oven, and they don't tell us to say this stuff, they're actually, Monogram's very nice. They're like, it's not about us. We want it to be something that the consumer enjoys when you do these talks. But I want to acknowledge that the concept of a hearth pizza oven is a very European concept that Americans are adopting, because it's about those communal family moments and redefining those as we redefine what luxury really means during all of this.
That's right. And I think that thinking about these things and anticipating them is a trend. It's a very bold trend in design and architecture, and we are now creating spaces with that in mind, which is very different. And it's actually not different, it's just returning, because it was always that way in Europe. It's a very European way to live. In America, we're the only ones that kick our kids out at 18, but not in my house.
No, that's perfect. My child's never moving out. I'm realistic. He is now 45, living in my basement, and I already know it, I'm sure. I'll let you, Laura, take Pinterest versus reality.
Well, I think that the idea today is with the thrust of internet being such a bold part of our lives, and it's a constant. It's not like some people are on internet, some aren't. It is a universal conversation. And I think when you look at when you enter into design relationship with a client or with a vendor or a supplier, you know, that kind of intersection that comes together when we're talking about design, we have to talk about the difference between the aspirational Pinterest vision board, which is very popular. We do it ourselves. We communicate quickly in the first few weeks with our clients. Let us know what you like. But the reality of that is and how it has to do with defining today's luxury is that I think there's two components to the way you approach design plan, and I think the difference is that Pinterest can be extremely unrealistic and misleading, and I don't think it does us a great service not to be prepared for that conversation and then have the dialogue and the ability to open the bandwidth for the client to say, hi, great, let's take bits and pieces of that, but the reality is, what is your luxury? And I think that that's the difference with today, is for today's designer and us, you know, the professionals out there, taking that conversation very seriously and then defining what each client's version of luxury really is. And it typically is not what a Pinterest image portrays. And I think when we start to plan, like I said, the best place to start planning your kitchen or anything you're actually going to be remodeling or redesigning or purchasing it's that intersection between the budget, your goals, and your vision, which is that Pinterest component, and then the truth about what your personal needs are right now. I mean, if we're talking about a holistic approach to design, we have to talk about what's going to make that person happy. Budget is a strong component to happiness, of course. And then we have the goals and the aspirations, and then we have to have that moment where they kind of collide and they create something unique and one of a kind that's going to give the client that joy. It may not be right for you, and I think that that's an important part of how designers approach with their client relationships, is that conversation must happen. You know, if it's not right for you, no matter how beautiful it is, or even if we match a Pinterest room, if it's really not you internally, that's going to create a stressful experience, and of course that's not joyful, and that is not a good thing. Goals are great if they align with your truth. And the best way to start any projects is just slow down. We force our clients to slow down, or they're not the right client, perhaps, because you have to be very thoughtful about your planning goals and be thoughtful about listening to the aesthetics that are collected on Pinterest, and then taking that and digesting it, and then coming out of that with their reality. So I think one great way of doing that is always to hire a professional. And even one, if you're a DIYer, even one good consulting session with a professional can steer you in a better direction. You must consider budget at all times. And the budget does, unfortunately does create our parameters when we design. So, and then thinking about function and task, and then how do we actually take the vision, the planning, and then we actually start to implement the strategy specifically in kitchen design. Jen, I know that you're doing something really cool as far as your columns and understanding exactly what it is that makes you happy, with still the aspirational image in your mind, but then transforming that into a space that is in your budget, that you can really work with, and that's going to bring you great joy, which ultimately ends up in a wellness state.
Which I want to, and we both want to acknowledge that a lot of you are designers or industry people who are listening to this. So if you're like, yeah, I know, tell me more about how I'm great at already doing all of that. It's really about now coming out of this quarantine, just refocused and refreshed on these concepts. So really this whole talk is to put it at the front of your mind and to set it forward. When you see that image of everyone smiling, like, that is luxury. That happiness and that joy is luxury. A lot of people, some of you might have been to some of my speaking gigs in life. I have a son who's had 20 surgeries. We lost our house, our cars, everything, 2009 in the midst of the chaos. And we hustled back. 10 years later, life is great. But when you have those moments of understanding what is a true luxury in life and what is going to bring you that internal joy, it's such a different value. So when you're talking to your clients about this will bring you joy, it does tie into that Marie Kondo spark joy concept, which yes, can be annoying because it was everywhere for so long, but there is an authenticity to that concept. So something as simple as the columns, and I'll preface, Monogram didn't tell us to do this. We're both on the design council, so we authentically buy into what they're doing. But so as you heard, I'm hustling back from 10 years of a not planned adventure and starting to do our new kitchen. I look like the love child of Elton John and Paula Deen. And so getting healthy is a part of my journey every year, 85 times a year. And so by having the ability aesthetically to put the fridge as a column or the glass fridge separate in the kitchen, but then to have the freezer column in the pantry separate away, because we're trying very hard not to eat frozen foods and eat fresh, and to redefine how we do that. And that's a luxury that even the mid-level consumer will save up for if you explain the why, because at that mid-market level, there's not that column concept that, and if there is, you can correct me, but not that I know of, that you can redefine that movement in the space by splitting it up. Like, why do they have to be together? You know what? Frozen food, go put that somewhere else, because you only need that in a pandemic when you realize you didn't buy enough, whatever to have for this emergency. But another luxury, as creative people, we are always trying to figure out what's going to make our image stand out for publication, for, showing how amazing you are to your industry, but to kind of start to tell that story. And the concept of luxury and the wow factor has started to shift and change a little. It started to come back to the craftsman and to really just the artisan and the story. And there's always going to be those high-end luxe items, but now it's the people and the emotional soul behind it that's starting to tell the story. And if anything, we're probably just validating what you are already doing, but then this is just a high five to say you've got this and that you're doing great, and go from there. But I find my clients, they're willing to spend when they know the story behind it more than just that dollar sign next to it. And this is a quick example of a craftsman I'm working with, or an artisan. She's a ceramic artist, and she's called the Object Enthusiast. And what it started because I saw that cup on the left and I loved it, and it just made my soul happy. I grew up with 2 kilns in my house, and I said, "Have you ever made tile?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Would you like to?" So that top right picture shows the tile that she's starting to glaze. She's handmade, and no one else is going to have it until she realizes it'll make her good money, and she starts doing a bunch of them. But this is the first one off. So it's that thoughtful, intentional story that becomes the luxury item that starts to layer into it as you're telling your story. I encourage anyone who hasn't done it yet to play with craftsmen and artisans to start telling new stories. And Laura, you're really good about designing for resiliency.
Yeah, I mean, part of the love affair with artisans and craftsmen and our local businesses is not only what you've described, which is amazing. And I think that that's what truly, those collaborations that can only really happen when 2 people come together to make something new. And I think that's the beauty of working with local artists. We probably 80% of what we resource is either a collaboration on something new or something that can keep our community really stable and thriving. One of the things that is really important about using community is, well, we've lived through the Wolseley fires all the way up the coast, and pretty much every mid-August, everybody kind of fastens their seatbelts for another dry, windy season, and who knows what can happen. So with all of that, experience as being a native Californian, I think one of the most important things that I've learned is building with resiliency in mind. It is a very strong trend, especially in California, because we do have not only the fires, but we have earthquakes and we have flooding. And so all things considered, it's really about the rebuild. So, for example, when this whole thing kind of happened and we had to stay at home, one of the first things universally we all wanted to do was support our local communities in business. And that's what happens when there's a disaster of any sort. We go to our local community to try to rebuild. If you go outside that community, for example, to buy something overseas or something that's mass marketed or something that has to travel quite a distance and they can't get in and out of your community to help you rebuild. If you look at that scenario versus the scenario of, hey, I built it with my community is still here, we have a disaster, we rebuild with the same community. It keeps the community very strong. It keeps relationships very strong. So at all times, that's really at the forefront of our way we approach it. And I think that it's potentially that this reset has caused us to all kind of reflect on that and maybe go back to community sustainability, which I think is a huge concept moving forward. We need to prepare for those kinds of disasters in the future. And I think our communities help us do that. And then that also contributes to wellness, not only in a healthy quality of our communities as far as air and resources. We also look at the happiness that brings as well. So this is such a great slide you found, Jen.
Yay.
Tell us about why you love this.
Well, my thing is I'm very honest in my journey about any anxiety or stress I've faced. Like that. You guys hear that echo? Okay, so but I'm very honest about what anxiety and stress I faced in my adventure. I really just call it being self-employed. But one of the things in our industry is us as creators or showrooms or anything like that. Our industry is always churning, detailed, moving, intense. There's pressure, there's liability. We are Sherpas of design, carrying our clients, our vendors, our everyone, trying to make sure that finale moment happens the way it's meant to be. And some of those moments aesthetically just have to evolve in our homes based on all of the loveliness we can add through those moments. A lot of you are probably already doing this. However, you're just going to see it more and more. You're going to start telling that story and having it appear. An interior courtyard, you saw it a lot in the 70s. I love a good 70s home. This is an architect out of the Gold Coast in Australia. And it's fresh. It's got the sunshine. Note to self, I will start wearing only sundresses in photos. It's really, though, about that reconnection with green space and how it makes you feel. You all know that, but now it's how much are you doing it for every client? This is like giving your client a Xanax without giving them a Xanax. I had a thing I posted once that said, is it rude to just pop a Xanax in someone's mouth while they're talking? But think about it. We're all going and we all need to recenter. My end goal is being adopted by the Hemsworth family in Australia, who is also known as Thor, because you see them in social media and whatnot, and they are outside. It is sunshine. It is all about being out having adventures and not always in your home, but then your home opens up and extends into the space. It started with all the doors, but now I think you're going to see more and more courtyards telling their story. And Laura and I were talking, the luxury for me is this is our house in progress. It's gotten further since then. It's still in progress because I had my journey and it doesn't matter, it happened. So what? It means I have to be very thoughtful in how I approach design in my personal space. It is a collaboration of friends, cheerleaders, people who have cheered us on through the whole adventure. But it was an 80s ranch of sadness. Like in my mind, it looked amazing, but I am slowly, intentionally adding those moments. And no joke, during this pandemic, having these sliding doors that can open up and let that air in has changed the way we live. I know you guys are doing it. Have you done a corner of them? Start challenging some of those moments as they happen.
Yeah, I would agree, Jen. One of the most important things that is on, it's kind of like the big buzzword now is wellness and biophilia. But the truth is that, you know, there's a lot of data and a lot of real scientific knowledge that has been focused on the area of wellness, with, in particular, with biophilia, daylight. There is a Happiness Institute that is, if you check those out, we can put that on the as one of the resources as we follow up. But they have such great data about how to integrate daylight and the proof biochemically what it's providing for us. The nature, bringing the nature indoors, that's a whole other subject, but living with nature. And that's a big design thrust, bringing the outdoors in. And what you just said, Jen, about opening the doors, it's not just cool, but it's very healthy. And designing for the five senses, designing for you know, your lifestyle, physical health, and stress triggers. All these conversations go into manifest what we would call a wellness home, or a wellness designed home with that in mind. And I do think that it's so important to consider these things as we move forward, but in a way that is not just trendy, but is very scientific. And that, you know, one of the takeaways, what are the four basic priorities when you begin a project to think about these is the concept, the planning, the budget, and the timeline. These are such, oh yeah, been there, done that, I've heard that. But do we really take the time to incorporate all this new knowledge into those four priorities? When we think about concept, are we thinking about luxury? Are we thinking about how we look at the version of the Pinterest and then we look at what we really are? Because, you know, there's going to be disappointment, I assure you, unless you're doing the whole house. And that's been a question. We had that question on Instagram. I just remodeled my whole house. We ran out of, you know, maybe ran out of money, and now I'm stuck with a kitchen that, you know, because of the concept or the planning wasn't done properly, or the budget wasn't considered well, and the timeline. So people rush. This thrust for us as designers, and we got so many designers on here today, but as designers, we have to kind of huddle up and represent the approach to design. It isn't such instant gratification. And I think the luxury is time. You know, that's the best gift we have. It's the most important gift we all have, that we can give our time to our clients, and that we can give them the time to actually find themselves. So I think taking wellness, defining their version of luxury, considering their true lifestyle, whether it's multi-generational, whether they are anticipating multi-generational, whether just downsizing for empty nesters, whether they want to age in place, and the kitchen being the heart of the home. And everybody will agree to that, I'm sure, that how does the kitchen design itself look to the future? And I think part of the way that, even Jen, when you said putting the column in another room so that you can access it separately, you know, we took over a closet, and it was a closet that was a coat closet, and it was adjacent to the kitchen. But thinking about wellness, and the truth is the clutter for me creates anxiety. So having something nearby where I can just put things out of sight, taking the time, managing the budget well enough to plan that coat closet, which I never really needed, is now going to be a little side pantry. And it can be lovely. It can be designed to, every time I open it, I'm happy. So that, as designers, if we can get to that place, and as manufacturers, we can have those conversations so that those products can create, that can intersect with that kind of ground. We're boots to the ground, the designers, and I think we have a responsibility to really have relationships with our brands so that we can get that communication going and make sure that they understand what's really happening in the home during the design process. Then that's what Monogram does so well. And no, they didn't ask me to say that, but the idea that they are listening to the designers, they are listening to the community. They want to see it. I can see our conversations take hold in the appliances and the fixtures and the fittings and the concepts, the spec sheets, all of these things as designers we need to have to do our work. And I think the conversation, if that conversation is really strong and bold, and we're considering the holistic approach, wellness, luxury, aspiration, budget, and open that bandwidth and drive patients into that first few weeks of your concept design, I think that the results will be stronger, and we will build our community up to a new standard where it's not wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's not, you can do this. And with all due respect, you cannot build a kitchen for $15,000 in 2 weeks. It just isn't going to happen. Yet that's what the consumer is being fed on. I mean, that's their diet. So
Laura, I know it's all those awful TV designers. Boo! Like, I mean, like I was one of those, so I get it. But like feeding off of that, like ultimately for you guys as designer showrooms and sales is now that we've gone through this whole adventure is to not to not expect that someone you wouldn't think would want luxury, because luxury of appliances that will last for a very long time gives peace of mind. And that peace of mind is the new luxury. And especially after everyone's been stuck with their stuff, staring at it. And you're going to find you're going to be able to sell that higher end concept to a new consumer that you were not expecting existed. So a new subcategory has almost been made by all of it. But Laura, here's the thing. We did it. We made it to Q&A. It's weird because I am doing the slides, so I can't see any of you. So I'm sure you all look amazing. But Laura and Pam, like, what questions do we have from people?
Well, we have one. That's our first question. The chat was about the pottery you presented. Can you talk a little more about that pottery?
Yeah, no, she's an amazing, she's from Kansas City. So Kansas City, everyone who knows me knows that I joke that it's cooler than it sounds. But also the wallpaper Porter Telio is from Kansas City. But the potter, her name on Instagram is called The Object Enthusiast. She does pretty well. She has like over 100,000 followers. And it's funny because I had like social media stalked her in a friendly way. And I just loved that she had color and softness. And every time as a designer, I try to do that casually organic, cool, not trying too hard aesthetic. I can't help it. I just go in and add something weird or a little twist. And this pottery lets me have that softer aesthetic with a natural feel, but really kind of that art turn it on its head. But you'd love her. Follow her. She's amazing. And she just moved studios and is starting to tell a new story.
Yeah, her stuff was really pretty, what you showed. So very original. So, hey, you could be, you could be the one who got her off the ground too. Now she's going to get bombarded.
I should make her sign a contract that I get like 1% of her empire.
Offer a Jen Bertrand discount or something. So we did have another one going back to the COVID lifestyle we're all living in. Tell us something that you've done in excess, and then tell us one thing you have eliminated during this time.
Ooh, that's a good question. Laura, you want to go first or second?
Yeah, I'll go first. Well, I think one of the things was really basic. It was just the food consumption, food and essential items consumption. And I think that's probably true for everyone. But I do love that it's created a sense of a lack of waste, really having to stretch things, really having to create things from what I already had instead of kind of feeling like, oh, well, I'm not really into that tonight. Maybe I'll go pick up something new, and then potentially having that go to waste. I love that we've stretched and been creative in the kitchen. I love that we've created some really wacky new pantry recipes where it's like, well, we never tried that, but this is all we have. And I think that's going to stay with me. I think it was in excess before, and now it's definitely, we could live with a lot less, I think. And that's been very powerful for us.
Well, and to play off of that, like my whole being is extra or excess. I can't help it. It's just who I am. I take everything in design very seriously, but I can't help but be a little much. But so the opposite, something that I was not doing at all was gardening. And I started like, I was like, this is a whole new phase, and had my gardening outfits. And I started really and truly understanding the need for fresh herbs and telling that story. A lot of people have already done living walls inside spaces, but I find you're going to have more and more people wanting that fresh rosemary as we go. It was always Pinterest worthy before, but I think it's a whole new market of starting to do it. If people like me are enjoying that, there's a whole market for that, of people who want that modern long planter that goes in front of the window, that has their fresh herbs, that doesn't have to have their irrigation system, but that it still adds those moments that enhance the way you live. And like, let's face it, you guys aren't quiet. You're designers. Feel free to ask questions or even make a statement of something amazing you've done that you think would help someone. Laura and I both believe in community over competition. So we know you're experts as well. So if there's something that was a hack that you did in design that you think really also defines itself with the new modern definition of luxury, feel free to put it in the chat.
Yep.
That's a great point with the gardening. We actually, with the kids home now again, we did start a garden as well, and it's amazing how it's more about the mindfulness, right? Everybody's really rethinking, and that's the best thing. Not because we're going to go back to going to the market again eventually, but the idea that your mind has been percolating something new is so exciting to me. Oh, good. We got no questions. So Jen, these questions came over Instagram over the past few days. They're such great questions. Jen, I'm going to ask which one I'm going to ask you. Ready?
Okay, go for it.
Let's see here. All right. What is the best way to mix styles in the kitchen, like French, modern, rustic, glam, etc.?
And I bet all of you out there are answering this in your head, because we all know it's personal. Me, I love nothing looking like one true aesthetic anyway. So I like the story being told different. The thing I instead hate are the kitchen crimes that happen. Like, my dad was NATO, so we lived in Germany for 4 years. And so I grew up seeing true chateaus and castles and villas and all of that. Once again, not trying to say it to sound cooler than I am. But when I saw that translated to America, and America's version of Europe in the 90s and early 2000s, that really made my heart sad. And part of the thing is obviously we all know if you love it, it's the right answer. But I think the thing is finding the textures that tell that story, that put it together. I'm a big fan of original art and redefining it in new ways. So like I love like our new kitchen. I call it like Palm Springs meets my modern weird brain. And I love Palm Springs, but I won't be probably as colorful, but I'll have some of that joy of life that happens in Palm Springs. So that really wasn't a very good answer. It was long-winded. I'm sure all of you answered it better in your head, but you get the idea. Laura, how about you? Let's do one more. Pam, any other questions? I can't see the chat, so I have no clue.
All right, I'll ask the questions then. Let's see. Let's see. How do you have a kitchen that is both timeless, classic, but stays within the times and the trends? Well, this is a great segue from what you just said. I'll go ahead and answer that one. I think one of the most important things to do when you're blending and merging styles is to establish a thread. You know, whether it's the color or finish. it's a color or a finish or a tone. For example, if you're going to do bright colors, then have that value throughout the whole thing. And so I think one of the ways that we take that information and merge it into kind of how do you keep it simple is simple basic rule, and I'm sure that there's exceptions to everything, would be to consider your fixed items like your countertops and your tiles and your cabinetry and your flooring, things that are going to have a longer lifespan because it's a higher investment. So I think keeping those things classic with the right tone, and then adding on top of that the modern trends and some of those colors in areas that are definitely interchangeable. Like you can always paint a wall, right? So paint is a great place to put that. Artwork is a great way to add a conversation about personal passions. You know, adding that into the plastic kitchen. It doesn't have to be white either, but some of those, that's a great way to start thinking about how to read them. Layer base items in your classic, and then add to that more of your trends so that they can be interchangeable. Think about one.
Oh, wait, what did you say, Pam?
Oh, I just said think about the longevity.
Yay. Well, I mean, honestly, I think we've talked Downhome Luxury at you guys long enough. And if you don't have questions, that's okay if you're shy.
We do have one more from Carrie Adams.
Thank you, Carrie Adams.
She wants to know, what is a gardening outfit?
Oh my gosh, Carrie, I have to tell you, I don't know what happened to me as a child, but like I have I'm sure a lot of you out there have this as well, but like I like vintage caftans and kimonos that play a role that work well for gardening. I honestly, I've had in the high-end world. This is how I want to end my final note on luxury. As a designer, as I've dabbled in the high-end world and I bounce between kind of varying markets, I find that there are some that will say, you must always be serious and you must hold it and elevate it to this level or you will not be taken seriously. I'm of the mindset that luxury to me is happiness and joy and moments and like everything that happens within that space you design, as well as it looking snobby and cool. So I take that same concept and put it to my clothes. It looks way cooler when I have possibly worked out, but really it's about just color and joy. And so, Laura, what's your final moment for luxury takeaway for everyone?
I think the most important thing that I want to say is that I remember in those times in my life where the smallest I would have heard something 1,000 times, but somewhere standing in a line at the bank, and all of a sudden somebody will say something and it's as if I first heard it. So I hope that today will give you just another vote of confidence, a bit of more permission to truly hold yourself a value, and give yourself the time to recognize what your own personal views are on luxury, and then spread that around. I think giving permission is a very important gift that we as designers hold. And I think for me, embracing what luxury means is different for every person. And I agree with you. This is why we get along, Jen. This is why we're having a love affair, is that joy and happiness and good health, whatever that means for you, is to create a space that is not up for judgment or interpretation. It's just for that one person to feel happiness in their day and to alleviate stress. So I hope that today, whether you've heard it a million times or not, maybe something today said, you know what, I've been sparked. I feel permission. It was just that one little thing I needed to hear to go out and find and determine and define my own luxury. Because luxury isn't a cost. It's not quantified by a dollar amount. It is quantified by the heart. And I think that's what's most important.
And if you didn't feel any of that, lie and tell Alex and Elise and Pam how much you enjoyed this amazing chat and that you are glad it was brought to you from Monogram Table Talks. And they're only continuing to share all of their amazing designers and resources that they have. And Pam, Elise, or Alex, we'll let you guys end it with anything you guys want to say as a final goodbye. Or not.
Oh, my phone would not come off of mute. My phone. I'm talking to my computer and now I'm calling it my phone. Oh my goodness. No, thank you guys so much. I learned, I can honestly say that I'm the culprit of just like playing on Pinterest and just having way too much fun with it and daydreaming. And I am quick to forget how I actually use my home and I just look at pretty pictures. So this was helpful, really informative, and I had some really good like belly laughs over here. So you guys are awesome, and thanks to all of y'all for joining. One thing I loved is that there's this awesome segue into from talking about kind of the psychology behind wellness and all of that, and that well into next week's. So continue to join us every Wednesday. I think these are fun and awesome. So we really appreciate you all for joining. On cooking something up in the ovens, and yeah, that's all we have for Monogram. So thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great day. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Bye,
you.
Joe in Miami.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.